Consistently on the program, we take a look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, particularly of Nigeria's security, judiciary, and the whole structure in that sense. But today, we must highlight what we consider strength and opportunities, and that follows the conviction, as we've reported, of those responsible for the Owo Church massacre on June the 4th, 2022. The sentence came in just in time for the 4th anniversary. Came in yesterday, June the 3rd. So it's exactly a year for those who are counting. Well, June the 5th actually happened June the 5th. So tomorrow will make it a year since the Owo Church massacre, and the sentencing came on June the 3rd yesterday. So we just want to have an exploratory conversation around the case, how we got to this point, what this means for the criminal justice system, and the fight against insecurity. We're joined on the program by a man who led the team, a senior advocate of Nigeria, Ayodeji Adedipe, counsel for the prosecution in this case, joins us live from our Abuja studio. Good morning, senior advocate, and welcome to the program.
Yeah, good morning, Kayode. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, first, I know that you must have gotten congratulatory messages. The governor of Ondo State spoke yesterday. This is a case that started with his predecessor, the late Rotimi Akeredolu, and it was a very emotional period for us as a nation, seeing those who went to church to worship their God ending up being massacred in the most heinous manner by these men. So walk us through what it took to get this conviction, lest we forget.
Now, thank you so much, Kayode. If I understand you, you're asking me what it took to get the conviction of the 4 men that were convicted yesterday for acts of terrorism with respect to the attack on St. Francis Catholic Church, Owo. I believe that's your question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. The success or failure of any prosecution depends wholly on the investigation. The case of Owo was thoroughly investigated by the DSS, aided by forensic intelligence gathering. So by the time we were briefed and went through the case diary, it was certain that a watertight case had been put together against the defendants. So we proceeded from there to identify the witnesses, amongst whom are eyewitnesses. Do recall that we fielded 11 witnesses, 6 of whom were eyewitnesses, and some of whom were victims of the attack. Those who saw what happened from the beginning. We fielded a woman who was an eyewitness and a victim whose 2 limbs were shattered and had to be amputated from the knees. That same woman also testified to the fact that her eye, which she demonstrated before the court, was ruptured as a result of gunshot. We brought the priest that was to be killed, but somehow escaped death by whiskers. And so many other eyewitnesses whose evidence were credible and unshaken under cross-examination. So the success of this prosecution basically was because of the thorough and painstaking investigation by the DSS. It was on the basis of this that we could adduce evidence that were compelling enough to persuade the judge to agree with us.
And now to the most logical question that follows issues like this. Who are these men? What was their motive? And who sponsored them?
Anyway, thank you. From the investigation, these men were members of a terrorist group called Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is an affiliate of Al-Qaeda, another international terrorist group. Investigation revealed that they decided to attack Owo because their leader, one Odoba, who remains at large, told them that the Catholic Church was insulting the Prophet Muhammad, which they considered blasphemous. And they now decided to go and attack the church. They were instructed to even kill the priest who celebrated the Mass on that fateful day.
And so we hope that we can explore other parts of the conversation, pending when the appeal is done, which would naturally be questions that may be running through the minds of, some who have watched this trial. And it would be that 47-year-old Momo Abubakar was discharged and acquitted. And when the defense was addressing the press yesterday, the defense did say that, that punctures a hole in the case of the prosecution, that how come 47-year-old Momo Abubakar was discharged and acquitted. I'd like you to give us a backstory to this as much as possible, if you can. And did any of the witnesses, identify either by voice or face the other 4 men that have been convicted?
Yeah, thank you so much. To start with, what the defendant's counsel said yesterday is totally wrong and misconceived, because the evidence led against the 1st to 4th defendants were so compelling and irresistible that the court didn't have a choice than to accept them. By the way, apart from very compelling circumstantial evidence, there were eyewitnesses, like I said earlier, who came to testify, who recognized them in the course of the attack. Inside the court, 2 of the convicts were identified by at least 2 witnesses. Then above all, the 1st to 4th defendants made confessional statements which were positive and voluntary. The attempt at retracting these statements fell flat in the light of other pieces of evidence which corroborated their confessional statement. The 5th defendant, on the other hand, did not make any confessional statement. However, evidence was led, circumstantial evidence, which is one of the ways by which a crime can be proved against a defendant. We led circumstantial evidence to the fact that certain sums of money were found in his account, huge sum of money, which he could not explain the source. And the investigation revealed that that money was part of the money he was using to sponsor these terrorists. But the learned trial judge, in his wisdom, considered the fact that, well, he didn't make a confessional statement, and that we were not able to link the money found in his account to the first and fourth defendants. Therefore, the judge held that a case had not been made against the fifth defendant. But for the first to fourth, the case against them was watertight and iron-clad, because there are three ways by which you could establish a crime against an accused person in court. The first is through eyewitness. The second is through confession and statement. The third is through circumstantial evidence that is compelling and irresistible. In this case, all these three ways were used. First, eyewitnesses came who gave evidence as to what they saw directly. Some of these eyewitnesses interacted with the accused person, particularly the Amotekun corps member. They chased them to the bush and they engaged them. Another eyewitness was a woman who was shot in the eye. She lost her eye, and the explosive device that was detonated shattered her two legs. So the evidence against the first to fourth defendant, like I have said, was watertight and compelling. So for the fifth, we are going to review the judgment further in the light of the evidence we adduced in court. We'll discuss with our client before we come to the conclusion whether or not we will appeal his acquittal. So we'll consider that. Right. So in a nutshell, the counsel for the defendants was very wrong in saying that because the fifth defendant was discharged and acquitted, all others ought to have been discharged and acquitted.
So,
very wrong.
If I understand you very well, this is based on, it's on a case-by-case basis to be able to establish
Correct.
the guilt of each individual. So that's why you're saying his position is faulty. But let's talk about something else.
Very faulty.
One of the things is very cherry. Cherry used cautiously because people have died. So we commiserate, and our hearts will always go out to those people whose families have been affected very badly and negatively. But cherry to the extent that justice has been served. But how we got here, 4 years, I would like you to speak to whether or not it's possible to see how processes like this can be expedited because of the unique challenges we're having. People want to see action, and sometimes the judiciary is being blamed for delays and adjournment, but you're the lawyer, you understand criminal justice system and what it takes to be able to establish a case beyond reasonable doubt. Was there a way this could have been done at a shorter time? Because we still have terrorists, some will be neutralized, some will be brought to court, and people want justice served as quickly as possible. Is that too much of an expectation from the populace?
No, not at all. Now, the truth of the matter is that there are different types of crimes. When it has to do with terrorism, it's a bit more complex and sophisticated. These guys have international connections. Like I told you, they are members of Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab terrorist group is an affiliate of Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is an international terrorist group. So to investigate them, you need a lot of forensic intelligence gathering because of the sophistication of the crime and because of the sophistication of their sponsors. Sometimes it's very, very difficult. And in order to get to the root of the matter, the investigation must be so thorough that you want to get a conviction. not on a platter of gold, but through thorough, painstaking, and forensic investigation. These things take time. Sometimes the investigators will have to even travel out of Nigeria to different parts. They deploy technologies. Most of these people, the moment they commit the crime, they will take off, disappear into thin air, and you'll be looking for them. So for an agency like the DSS, they are particularly concerned about doing a thorough investigation that can lead to conviction if these people are eventually arraigned in court, as it has happened in our case. That bit of it, because of the complexity and sophistication of the criminals, the terrorists, sometimes takes a lot of time. But by the time this investigation was concluded, I'm talking about our case now, and they were arraigned in court. They were arraigned in court last year, August. It's less than a year. Trial actually started in December 2025. And by yesterday, June 3rd, judgment was delivered, less than a year when the trial started. The trial judge gave it accelerated hearing, and both the prosecution and defense counsel, in fairness, cooperated with the court. So it was a day-to-day hearing, more or less. And 16 witnesses in all were called. The judge was writing in longhand. It took a long time to record their statements, their evidence in court. So the period of investigation took more time because of the complexity and because the investigators didn't want to do a wishy-washy investigation that cannot stand the judicial scrutiny. And that was why. So, but once that was concluded and they were charged, it was not difficult for the prosecution, and it was not difficult for the judge to agree with the case presented by the prosecution because of the thorough investigation upon which the prosecution was anchored. So it was a watertight case, particularly against the first to fourth defendants.
I mean, yes, the process
so that was what happened.
Yeah, the process of justice can be quite painstaking, and helping us understand, you know, this flow. I mean, I think it's great. Investigation clearly took a long time. The arrests, I believe, were made in August 2022. So from August 2022 up until towards the end of last year, so investigation took about 3+ years, while the court process took less than a year. So perhaps we might need to find ways to then ensure that the investigation process, as much as it is watertight, is also speedy in that nature. But again, this is about the strengths and opportunities in the system, because clearly we've seen that we're able to deliver justice as best as we can. I know that there was a 6th suspect arrested, right, because reports came through about a 6th suspect being arrested. Perhaps you can speak to that if it's in the purview of this case. But also, so while these are those who carried out the heinous attack, there are obviously those who are funding them, the ones who recruited them. You know, they always say that these are field soldiers. They are the high-ups who some think remain untouchable. So to what extent did this whole investigation process try to get to the high-ups, the funders, the real funders of this terrorism?
Well, what I can tell you is that these people are still being investigated. You know, some of these things we cannot be saying them on air, but I can assure you that the DSS is doing a very thorough job going after the sponsors, not only the criminals that were arrested, arraigned, and have just been convicted. But it's not easy because of the nature of acts of terrorism. Like I told you, it's very complex and sophisticated. So I believe, as we speak, they have not ended their investigation, particularly with respect to how the sponsors of this heinous crime will be arrested.
We'll certainly love to see the sponsors as well being tried and convicted. So this will serve as a deterrent, not just to the foot soldiers, but other likely soldiers in and out. Right, you wanted to say something as we wind down?
Yes, I definitely will get to that point. Yeah, I just wanted to make a point that there was this false narrative before now that the terrorists that have just been convicted, apart from the fifth, were charged to court because they filed a fundamental human rights case against the DSS. That is a false narrative because they claimed to have filed a fundamental human rights case which they did not serve on the DSS. It was in the course of the trial that we became aware that they had filed a purported fundamental human rights suit against the DSS. They never served that. So it was when the DSS was convinced that the investigation has been concluded and definitely it will assist the prosecution in getting a conviction that they were charged without any prompting from anybody.
All right.
Meanwhile, when they arrested, some other suspects were arrested. They were profiled. And when they investigated and interrogated them, those who were not involved were allowed to go.
Right. Well, Senior Advocate, it's good to speak with you and just chronicle the events that led up until this point. We must thank you and the investigating authorities for the work being done, and wish them the very best as we confront all the other challenges right now, so that we can show that our system has consequences for evil, for wrongdoing. We've been speaking with Senior Advocate of Nigeria, so Counsel for the prosecution in this Owo Church Massacre case, Ayodeji Adedipe. Thank you for your time and wish you the very best as this progresses, of course.
Thank you so much, Kayode. Thank you.
Well, we'll take a break now, and when we return, we have more for you. Stay with us.